Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Jay Baker, and in this episode, I'm joined by Graham Butcher, Head of Meeting Advisory at Link Group.
Hi, Jay. Thanks very much for having me on this afternoon. So what would you like to talk about today?
Well, as you know, the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act 2020 comes to an end on the 30th of March this year. And that causes some issues for our issuer companies in terms of what they're going to do for their AGMs this year. Now, we at the Registrars Group have been asked to comment on some new guidelines and best practice about what companies can do in the future. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to tell you a little bit more about that.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. Yeah. So these updated guidelines that the companies need to follow when they're having a shareholder meeting during lockdown, the guidelines come to an end on the 30th of March. So I imagine there's a lot of companies out there that want to know what they can do going forward around their AGMs, whether they can hold hybrid meetings or virtual meetings. So just tell me a little bit about the guidelines and your involvement.
So the guidelines are, it's basically a best principles documents or best guidelines document, if you like, which is set out in a very easy to follow questions and answer type scenario that asks questions on, what can I do if CIGA, the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act, is not able to support me in holding a closed door meeting? What do I do if my notice of meeting is issued before the 30th of March and then I have to make some changes following that? So that's the type of question that the best practice document will seek to answer, and will also within that document provide some I'm going to say framed notices of meeting, so a best practice of each scenario for what companies can pick up and use for their own situations. And what the Registrars Group were asked to do as a result of the best practice document almost being in complete form was just to give it an eyeball, to go over, check on its accuracy. Were there things there that were missing? What were the practicalities that we could insert into the document? Now, that document has now been written. It's with the ICSA, the Governance Institute, and has been shared with the relevant legal groups, and is with a QC and the FRC for final sign-off. So that's our involvement with it. But there's an awful lot of questions, as I say, that get asked in there. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because I know, Graham, that you're working on our own developments around how we can support companies around hybrid and virtual. So actually a question back to you, if you don't mind, is what do you see as Link's involvement in providing for more governance around AGMs and general meetings during this coming season?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Jay. So I'll answer that in two parts, if you don't mind. The first part really is those companies holding meetings up until the 30th of March, because I think we're fairly clear cut there that any company that's holding a meeting up until that date can fall under the CIGA Act, and therefore will be able to hold a virtual meeting or a hybrid meeting, certainly, even if their articles don't allow. So I think what we are seeing now is a lot of companies come to us, particularly since sort of Christmas.
Sure.
And sort of say, look, last year we held a meeting behind closed doors. Our meetings come up again. We want from an engagement and governance perspective to be seen to be doing the right thing. So more and more of our companies are asking us, what sort of hybrid facilities we can deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've developed, as you know, a couple of really good products and services that we can support.
Yeah.
Using our own internal Orient Capital sister company, who offer a really good webcasting platform. So we can allow shareholders of our companies to join in, sign in electronically, join a webcast, listen to the chairman and the directors give the AGM, but also from an engagement perspective, be able to ask questions via a web chat function, which is proving really popular. So that product is working really well. We also have the option if clients want to go one step further in terms of voting, as well as enabling shareholders to ask questions, allowing shareholders to do live voting. And we've had a long established partnership with Lumi, as you know, and we can offer that as an alternative. That's sort of the first part of the question asked. In terms of the second part of the question, this is a really difficult one because obviously no one's actually seen the paper yet, or we're not sure what's going to happen going forward. around the CIGA. We do know for sure that obviously it can't be extended because it's already been extended twice beyond the original deadlines. So there has to be some new legislation, which, as you know, we were told, we wouldn't be able to get any legislation done until July at the very earliest. And, that probably won't be a priority for the government, given what's going on with the pandemic. So it really is a question of what am I seeing out there with companies that have their meetings after April? And I think there's a couple of options, really, or what I'm seeing is a couple of options anyway. We've got some companies where they're kind of hedging their bets at the moment, so they are almost preparing two notices. One that enables them to have a physical meeting again, but also a second option that allows them to have a hybrid with a physical. And I guess that gets around the question of still having a physical location of the meeting, although they might have to, obviously, depending on the tiering at the time or the restrictions in place, they might have to restrict the number of shareholders they have at the physical event, even if they hold both. That's pretty much what we're seeing, really. There isn't a huge amount that companies can do beyond that, unless you can obviously give me some insight in terms of what's likely to come out of the recommendations.
Well, it's the recommendations or the question and answers that are going to be provided are pretty much set out the best case scenarios around everything you've just said. What does a company do if CIGA is not extended? And it won't be extended. We're pretty sure about that. There's no parliamentary time available, and it would require primary legislation. So the purpose of the document is to give issuers the comfort in planning for different scenarios based on their shareholder base, their meeting type and location. So I think what we would expect from most companies is, as you have said, a hybrid type solution that will provide for the physical presence of the base quorum for a meeting and shareholders dialing in from remote locations, given that you've mentioned the tiering system and or other lockdown provisions that might be in place. So I think that's where we're going to be landing this year as a whole scale type thing for the whole AGM season. That's where we're going to land. And I think a question on a lot of companies' minds is, well, my articles don't provide for a digital meeting, so I have to hold the physical. And the one of the questions that's answered in this best guidance is that very question. If a company's articles are completely silent on digital, whilst they would not be able to hold a virtual meeting, the holding of a hybrid attached to a physical meeting is permitted. So your full AGM, your communication with shareholders, and that ability to present to the shareholders and allow the shareholders to ask questions and vote, as you've highlighted, can be preserved within the hybrid environment. That's, I think, one of the most important messages that this new guidance is going to present. The companies that I've already talked to, Graham, about what their plans are for this year, I'd be interested to know what do you see as the overall sentiment? Are you seeing companies turning more towards favourably looking at the hybrid as opposed to closed doors, do you think?
Yeah, I think we are. I think there was kind of an acceptance last year, certainly from shareholder party and stakeholders, that because companies were faced with this pandemic and it kind of hit them very quickly, that behind closed doors was obviously pretty much the default option, if I'm honest. It was the easiest path to go down in terms of least resistance and effort.
Yeah.
And with everything else going on, probably wasn't their number one priority, managing the AGM. A lot of it for a lot of companies, it was keeping the show on the road, as you can imagine. So I think now that companies have had time to think about it, and the pandemic has lasted longer than anyone could have forecast, if I'm honest. I don't think anyone doing a closed meeting last year had any idea we're going to be in the same position with a pandemic, the same time this year. I think there's certainly more of an appetite now to plan ahead and start thinking about, okay, we did have a closed meeting last year. It isn't great from a shareholder engagement and corporate governance perspective. We really need to be doing a lot more this year. And that's why we're getting a lot of inquiries around, particularly for webcasting. Webcasting tends to be popular. I think a lot of companies are comfortable with the fact that they can collect the voting in advance and then just allow shareholders to be able to engage the board by asking questions through a web chat. And that seems to be very popular. I would say we're seeing a lot of inquiries around that. And from a cost perspective, if you're not having to hire out a venue or anything like that, certainly for larger companies, there is quite a huge cost saving by going down that model. But I guess if we get through the pandemic, the lockdown restrictions are lifted slightly, then I can see hybrids really taking off in terms of they'll be the medium of choice going forward, because it will give shareholders the option of going along to the meeting or being able to join the meeting in the comfort of their own home.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, 2020, as we know, was unprecedented. That's a statement that's been said an awful lot. 2021 into 2022 even, I think we're going to be looking at certain restrictions on movements and being able to hold that physical meeting in a safe environment will probably mean more hybrids. The FRC and other shareholder bodies or other stakeholder groups, if you like, are very much in favour of companies supporting good corporate governance and good shareholder engagement. So the hybrid is the solution for that. So I'm very positive that we're in a good place to be able to serve our clients, certainly with those type of events and solutions that will be bound to them. And of course, innovation and new technologies are coming down the stream too to help support all of that. So thank you, Graham, for participating in this short discussion. I'm sorry that I landed you in it slightly and didn't give you an opportunity to know what we were going to talk about. But in a way, I wanted that to be the case because I wanted the listeners to understand that this is new and there is a view to be had and we're the voice to listen to there. So thank you for being on board. We are hoping that the ICSA, the Governance Institute, will be in a position to publish the best principles or guidelines, whatever it's going to be entitled, shortly. That could happen before the end of this month, which is February 2021. And we'll let our listenership and readership know as soon as that happens. But in the meantime, if any of our clients have got any questions on what they should be doing for their AGM in 2021 or other shareholder meeting, please do reach out, get in touch with me or Graham or your relationship manager, and we can talk you through the options that are available and how we can help deliver a 21st century solution for your shareholders. So again, thank you, Graham. And I shall call this podcast to a close. Thank you.